Bueno, iniciamos la última sesión de este seminario dedicada a analizar cuánto es el conocimiento que debe impartirse, y esto está vinculado a la evaluación de los estudiantes, al resultado de esta diferencia en la enseñanza. La doctora Suzanne Grant-Lewis es directora del Instituto Internacional para el Planeamiento Educativo de la Unesco. Y usted ha tenido experiencias en distintos países, no solo por su responsabilidad en la Unesco, sino porque ha estado en el África, ha trabajado en Namibia, ha trabajado en Malawi. Cuando se habla de planeamiento internacional, supongo que hay, y que usted ha comprobado, enormes diferencias entre los países, los sistemas, las posibilidades. ¿Hay algún criterio universal? ¿Hay algún elemento común a todos los países que pueda integrar el planeamiento?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to express how delighted I am to be here having this conversation with Ambassador and benefiting from his experience as historian and journalist and probing us in many different ways. Yes, indeed. There are variations, but there's also a lot of similarities because planning is fundamentally about choices, setting priorities and then allocating the resources to meet those policy priorities, and then mapping out an operational plan and monitoring it. So it's a whole cycle that involves policy making as well. So every country in the world is involved in this. They may not do it in the same way. In most African countries, there's you do a diagnosis of the system to understand the needs. You you're often given the policy priorities, which are often political choices rather than educational, necessarily driven by educational purposes. And then you have to figure out, okay, given those policy directives, how do we make that happen? How do we allocate human, financial, physical resources on what's in what phasing, et cetera, and see what is it we can afford, at what pace can we make progress, and then be sure you're monitoring it. And I think that the actual documents may vary a lot across countries, but all countries have to set priorities and determine how they allocate their resources in pursuit of the policy priorities.
Pero usted está a cargo del planeamiento internacional. Y entonces, ¿cómo se produce la relación entre países? ¿Cómo se da, digamos, las diferentes prioridades? ¿Cómo se computan? ¿Qué es, en definitiva, el planeamiento internacional de educación?
What is international education planning? It is the practical pursuit of the policy priorities of a country. And as I said, it should be based on an analysis of the needs of the country. So equity issues, quality issues are very important. When we connect it to the SDG 4 agenda, which is certainly our responsibility as a UNESCO institute, it's our responsibility as an international institute with this universal agenda, it's really important that we emphasize the quality and the equity perspectives because these are really top priorities for SDG 4. So we put a lot of effort in helping UNESCO member states analyze their own data in order to inform that. Better be sure that we're looking at gender differences, regional differences, socioeconomic differences, and more we are emphasizing looking not just at access and retention, but also the quality of the education. And not just inputs, but the learning outcomes. What are the differences in learning outcomes across the different segments of the population? And those, we would argue, have to be emphasized in the planning process. Strategies need to be designed, and you then need to figure out how you're going to allocate your resources to pursue those, to bring those strategies to fruition and monitor progress in that way. That's more than a word.
Todo es more than a word. ¿Qué papel cumple el planeamiento internacional y en especial su instituto en el Plan Educación 2030?
So we're playing we hope a vital role in helping member states implement SDG 4 Education 2030. When it comes to the issues that we're addressing here, it's a very complementary role to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, where Sylvia was on the previous panel, whereas, and I don't like to try to capture for the UIS what their role is, but it's they do a lot to determine to design the indicators, to assist with data collection and analysis. And we are more focused on the use of that data to inform the decision making. And so this is true for analysis of learning data. So I'm very interested in the questions you posed for this panel about, how are there useful assessments for evaluating knowledge acquisition, for example. Yeah.
Akiko, ¿no? Estamos hablando de evaluación y hablamos de evaluación de conocimientos, pero también hemos coincidido en que uno de los propósitos de la escuela es estimular la creatividad, propiciar técnicas que permitan la solución de problemas, relacionar lo abstracto con lo práctico. ¿Cómo se evalúa todo esto?
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, evaluations, we are trying to have a multifaceted evaluation in the high school education and also university education, and also even for the university entrance exams. So could you present my slides on the screen? Well, yes, that one. Thank you. Yesterday I talked about the active learning and also the inquiry-based learning at the high school level. And well, we think the diagram on this one, the triangle with the upper side, is now the aim of education to nurture the balanced development of three competencies. That is called competencies for living, or that is called zest for living in Japan, including not only knowledge and skills, the blue part, but also the green part, the ability to think, judge, and express oneself. That is very emphasized these days in Japanese education. And also the orange part, that is the ability to approach learning and qualities, the human qualities. That is the attitude toward learning as a lifelong learner, and active learning with collaborating with other people in diversity. So we really emphasize the balanced development of three competencies in high school. So I'd like to talk about the reform of not only the curriculum of education in high school, but also we are doing the reform of university entrance exams. The next slide, please. Next slide, please. The second one. Second one. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Well, this is very, it has a lot of characters, so maybe you don't have to see the in details, but I just want to emphasize the holistic reform, not only the curriculum at high school level, but also the reform of the university education to continue the development of attitude toward learning, and also the reform of university admission system. Actually, we have two kinds of admission system if you want to go to universities. The first step is to take the National Common Test. That is very large-scale assessment. 500,000 G12, grade 12 students take. And it has a long history from 1980, but it was a criticism that if you want to go to the university, you know, you need to get the more scores to get into good universities. For example, I will be a winner and you will be the loser. The difference is just 1 point. So that is not a good entrance admission system to universities. So we are changing it to the National Common Test to have more the items to require students to write essays, for example, in reading and math. And also the English test will be the assessment of 4 skills, not only writing, not only reading and listening, but also in the writing and speaking. So those kind of changes we are trying to do. That is because if you want to change the curriculum of the high schools, we need to change the evaluation of the students to go to universities. And also, there are the second steps by individual universities, like to see the attitudes toward learning. So each individual universities have a lot of different kind of admission system, like having essays, presentations, or group works, observing group works, or etc. So just I'd like to say that the evaluation is very difficult, but the traditional paper-based assessment is not good to assess the real ability to be nurtured or to be necessary to the new the society, to be I mean, the new competencies should be evaluated with the marriage perspective.
Usted dice que a partir del 2020 introducirán un test para evaluar las habilidades adquiridas y que test es un nombre provisional. ¿El nombre definitivo puede ser examen?
Yes, the name is not still provisional here, but we will say that it will be the National Common Test. But it's not only the paper-based test. With traditionally we had a mark sheet style with paper and pencil, and coding was by computers. But the new test from 2020, the essays or open-ended questions are coded by human beings, and also the skills of of English in speaking and will be coded in another way. So it's not the paper-based test, but it's more, it will utilize the more ICT usage or something like that.
Vuelvo entonces a la pregunta inicial. Esos test o concursos, ¿cómo pueden medir algo que en algunos aspectos es abstracto, en otros puede ser muy práctico, como es la creatividad y la solución de problemas? ¿Hay un método, una forma de medir esto?
Yes, well, I think the test a long time ago was evaluating the degree of knowledge, but our aim to have a new test is to evaluate the ability to judge, think, or express. So, I think there is influence by PISA, actually, for the, we have a national test for grades 6 and 9 in math and reading, and we introduced the items to assess application, the degree of application. So I think the PISA type questions, for example, said the several materials for students to compare or express their ideas or think about pros and cons of some topics. So those kind of items will be introduced in the new test.
Can I add something? Yes, thank you. I wanted to add that alongside this work that's being done, there's been some very interesting OECD research looking at, which is kind of pushing more attention to non-cognitive skills or learning. And they've done some really interesting analysis looking at social outcomes of people who've been educated and how the social outcomes increase with educational attainment. And we see some strong patterns with better health, interpersonal trust, volunteering, civic and political engagement, tolerance, attitudes towards migrants, etc. So it poses a challenge for us. So how are we teaching those kinds of things? And so I think this is leading to much more attention to the social emotional skills. And the top one, this most predictive, is conscientiousness. So IBE, the International Bureau for Education, as well as OECD, are working together to try to figure out how do you teach conscientiousness? How can it get integrated into the curriculum? And what are the components of it? So it's like it includes achievement orientation, persistence, a sense of responsibility, self-control. But this is unlikely to lead to a test. We're going to have to find other ways to assess this. And we have a wide range of assessment opportunities, observation and interviews of students and just performance. There are many ways to assess student learning of these other skills, but a test is probably not the way to go.
Cuando se trata del ingreso a la universidad, como es el caso, ¿quién hace esas observaciones, esas evaluaciones, esos assessments a los que usted se refiere? ¿Quién debe hacerlos?
For entrance into university. So it depends on how it's done now. It depends on the system quite a lot. But I think I grew up through the United States higher education system, and it's an achievement test, the SAT. It's an incomplete picture of the person. So an application for selection involves quite a lot more than simply a test. It also involves a motivation essay, why do you want to come here, why do you want to study, etc., as well as recommendations from teachers and guidance counselors. And in the US, they're looking for the well-rounded person who has extracurricular activities. So all of these pieces are part of the selection process.
Pretty much the same as the United States. We are aiming to do individual universities. Each university has nowadays admission policy in which what kind of students the university wants to admit and what kind of students each university wants to educate. And that costs a lot because the very individual interviews, etc. So the balance between the national common test and the individual university admission system is very important. But it's basically the university educators are the person who evaluate the students in the admissions process.
Esto tiene mucha importancia en América Latina porque esta es una larga discusión. Hay quienes creen que habiendo cumplido el ciclo secundario exitosamente, el acceso a la universidad debe ser libre. Y hay quienes creen que, por el contrario, es necesario hacer un test de conocimientos, porque no necesariamente el haber completado la educación secundaria implica que existan las habilidades y los conocimientos suficientes para iniciar una carrera terciaria. De modo que saber si estamos hablando de un examen o no, si estamos hablando de un examen o sobre una observación, sobre una evaluación de conocimientos, de actitudes, de expectativas, tiene mucha importancia en nuestros países y por lo tanto yo quiero insistir si debe haber o no un examen para el ingreso a la universidad.
I think there has to be some academic standards, but I think if you're interested in, from the state perspective, it's an investment, especially if university is free. So you should be paying attention to the other elements, including the SAT in the US, used in the US. It is a terrible predictor of performance at university level, and it is not a predictor at all of perseverance to graduation. It's helpful for knowing some level of academic competence, but it's insufficient. It's insufficient, which is why most universities have a complicated formula looking at a range of issues. I don't know, in Japan?
Just I'd like to say again that not only the test, but also the multifaceted evaluation is important to when you want to go to the universities.
Usted dice que no necesariamente un examen permite predecir cuál va a ser la performance, y menos aún cuál va a ser la tasa de graduados. Ahora, ningún examen permite predecir menos, ¿o no?
Maybe not. Yes, and I'll preface my remarks by saying I am neither a psychometrician nor a learning specialist. I come from the policy planning line. But no test can do everything. So what's really critical from assessment in a primary school versus an assessment for selection into university, you need to be clear on what your purpose is and design the assessment accordingly. So if the purpose would be to make sure that the applicant has the minimal academic standards, that's very good. But don't expect that it's necessarily going to serve other purposes.
usted nos explicó hoy que la evaluación en su país, la evaluación de los maestros es hecha por los directores de escuela y la evaluación de los alumnos es hecha por los maestros. Ahora, en el caso que estamos considerando, que es la evaluación necesaria para el ingreso a la universidad, ¿cuál es el sistema que deberíamos adoptar y cuál es el sistema que ha adoptado su país?
Well, I'm coming from the background that is not dealing with assessments at the university level. The target and the experience relates to the compulsory education and mostly foundational skills. Well, but you approached me as a personnel from Slovakia, so I know the situation. And the situation is that in European Union, we have a lot of opportunities. So basically, if you would look into statistics, 10% of students studying in Czech Republic are Slovaks. So they are going to the West. And then we have a lot of universities, and they are paid based on the head counts. How many students is in the university? They can get funds for that. So basically, they are not really pushing for exams, except particular fields where it could be harmful not to request some entrance examination. So basically, if you are opting for a field there is like jammed or pressure on it, you can expect examination. But then it's coming to the two issues. One is related to selecting the best candidates, but you need to understand that you are selecting the best candidates now in this moment, and it's judged upon the past record and current achievement. So basically you are missing the grit. And you are missing other emotional, social-emotional factors. You are missing the context of the person, the dedication of the person. And I'm afraid you will need to live with it.
Pero estamos hablando de métodos de evaluación para el ingreso, que puede ser el examen, puede ser ningún examen, puede ser la observación, el análisis de los conocimientos que hace la propia universidad. Cualquiera sea el método, usted nos señala que su especialidad no es la educación universitaria, pero el ingreso a la universidad no es una evaluación de la calidad de la educación media.
Yeah, well, basically there is a huge notion and attempt to get organized. So, for example, we had Bologna process in Europe. There are processes, regional, global, that are trying to understand and link a specific level of education and actually secure that at specific level there will be specific competencies backing up the papers, you know. So that's okay and that's achievable. Also, you can evaluate or examine the content knowledge. That's achievable. Sometimes you don't need other means, not only pen and paper, of course, but it's achievable. But then there is a lot of ways how to misjudge. I would recommend you, if you are flying, you may come across a book from Daniel Kahneman. And he was psychologist, and he was looking into various problems, and what he came across was that in some cases data was telling clearer story than expert evaluators. And that was not because experts would not know, but they got confused, and they got charmed by applicants or by people. So we have halo effect. We have a lot of psychology working against us. So at the end, you will be grateful for an easy mathematics exam, because at the end it is linked. It is developing your cognitive skills, but it's also discipline. It's developing your personality in a way of working, planning, exercising, dedicated time. So yes, I will still stay with these foundational skills.
Charme es también una habilidad. Pero en el planeamiento, por supuesto, la manera en la cual la secuencia de la educación tiene importancia, el modo de evaluar paso a paso la performance del alumno es parte sin duda, no se puede, yo creo, planear sin tener en cuenta estas escalas, de modo que la discusión sobre los métodos de escalamiento creo que es pertinente. Y respecto a lo que estamos hablando, ¿cuáles son las tendencias dominantes en las distintas regiones que usted mide en su tarea de planeamiento internacional?
Related to student evaluation? Mm-hmm. Yes, so I think the world is seeing massification of higher education. The region I have worked the most in is Africa, and this is certainly the case, but it also started at a very low level at the time of independence for countries. So there was this opportunity for huge growth, and there's progress, but it's still only 15% or something, and only in some countries. And there are major differences between Francophone Africa and Anglophone Africa, with it being far more restricted in Francophone Africa. So we have a popular push for the expansion of higher education. That's accompanied by a concern about quality, maintaining quality. And that is then seen in a big push, the global trend, to pay more attention to quality assurance in higher education. And that operates in two ways. So there's universities, each individual higher education institution must have a quality assurance system. How do they know that they're delivering quality services to students, teaching and learning is happening? How do they know that the curriculum they're offering is serving the students well, it's not just the labor market, but serving society well, and you have to monitor those kinds of things. And we've done IEP's done some work on internal quality assurance systems in universities. But then there's also external quality assurance. Given that in many countries, most of the higher education sector is publicly funded, the government has a role to play in regulating higher education institutions without necessarily managing them individually. And so external quality assurance is about this relationship between the government and the individual higher ed institutes, and is often tied to funding. I mean, that's the most powerful lever that the government would have. Whether it's, as in South Africa, the funding of a university is tied to not just numbers of students, but also graduation rates and research publications. And so you can get more money if your faculty are publishing more, et cetera. In other systems, that's not the central funding. It's more the better you are, the more competitive you are for federal research grants, for national research grants. So this is really very important. This is a big trend. And accompanying that then is regional quality assurance bodies, accreditation bodies, sometimes called buffer organizations, which are recognizing, and they're building very strongly on the Bologna process, recognizing that there's tremendous value in student mobility and faculty mobility. And so having regional arrangements to ensure quality, that the bachelor's degree in Kenya is recognized in Uganda or Rwanda or what have you. So that's a big trend, regional accreditations, and that then feeds into the conventions, the regional and global conventions. And this is a very big emphasis for UNESCO, promoting a global convention in higher education.
Como usted dice, el financiamiento está vinculado al número de alumnos. El Estado, que tiene que hacer ese financiamiento, puede estar interesado en value for money. Por lo tanto, debe haber cupos en el acceso a la universidad, debe estar limitado a determinada cantidad de alumnos y por lo tanto el sistema de evaluación tiene que decir quién entra y quién no.
So I sat next to at lunch the founder of the university in Argentina, which is the largest distance education offer university, and so I learned a bit about how the public-private situation is in Argentina. I think that situation is not uncommon elsewhere, where publicly funded universities are the majority, but there's a real growth in private universities. And the dilemma is whether they're nonprofit or for-profit. And I think I have problems with for-profit, because I think that we should be moving to higher education as a common good. Not that we can offer free higher education to everybody, but that it is what creates intellectual contributions, science advances, et cetera, and those are common goods. So I have trouble seeing them as for-profit enterprises. But on the quota question, some universities have moved from a mixed model of financing. So there'll be maybe 60% of the student body will receive government fellowships, and the university will accept another 40% if they can be self-paying. So they're fee-paying and publicly supported students in the same university. The issue is whether or not the government can really implement a need-based bursary system. And in many countries, the student loans have not worked at all. They're supposed to be a rotating fund, but it tends to rotate once and never gets replenished. People don't pay their loans back, so we need to make more progress on that. But I think that's a trend, more mixed financing universities. They remain public universities, but they accept privately paid fees.
Sí, ahora la educación masiva, el libre ingreso a la universidad tiene un mérito, tiene un valor, porque aun cuando el alumno no siga su carrera, aun cuando no avance en eso, los conocimientos primarios que puede dar la universidad favorecen el desarrollo de la cultura general. Pero desde el punto de vista del financiamiento, sí, hay por supuesto, universidades privadas y públicas, pero por ejemplo, hablando de la pública, si uno tiene la misma cantidad de financiación para 100 alumnos o para 200, aplicarla a 200, por supuesto, va a necesariamente bajar la calidad. ¿Cómo se concilia eso? ¿Cómo establecer cupos que no afecten la importancia que tiene en la cultura general la universidad?
It's true. It is this difficulty of expansion of opportunity, but if the public funding is finite, as it is everywhere, how do you ensure the quality? And I think this is a problem that's facing some countries that have quickly expanded access, where you have overcrowded lecture halls, you have very high student-to-professor ratios, and insufficient living space, etc. So I think it is a big issue, but I think it's also recognized, and governments are trying to attend to that. There's another wrinkle which we haven't talked about, which is the difficulty of retaining faculty, university faculty members, as the conditions of work decline. So if you get bigger and bigger lecture halls with people hanging out the windows and the doors, it's really difficult to do any kind of serious assessment of learning, and faculty. I know in sub-Saharan Africa, faculty salaries are not increasing with the increase of class sizes, lecture hall sizes. So some countries are really facing a real problem of retaining the next generation of faculty.
Muchas gracias a ustedes, como a todos los expertos que han contribuido a este análisis, a este seminario. Vamos a hacer un muy breve intermedio para después escuchar a la viceministra de Educación de la Argentina, secretaria de Innovación y Calidad Educativa, y a posteriori hacer el cierre del seminario. Muchas gracias.
Check.